we are here because so welcome again, and as you all know, we are here because we are part of a very innovative exercise that has been about innovating around peer review and having a collaborative approach to peer review. And this has been an event that has attracted many and has also been a learning space for many. So we continue with the same spirit today. We have an amazing preprint and publication to review today. I know you have read it and we are all gearing to go. Before we do that, I'll just want to quickly mention that, so I want to quickly mention a few things that you need to note for this event. One is that we see that most of you have changed your name to your real name, so we appreciate that. We also ask you to add your name on the roll call on page 6 and 7. Please go there, page 6 and 7 of the collaborative page. Check on chat, the link is there. Go on page 6 and 7 and please put your name there. So click on that link on the chat and go put your name there. This call has been recorded and we will share the video with a wide audience. We'll be able to share this, and in case you have you're not willing to be part of that, you could let us know. And then please keep your mic on mute throughout if you're not speaking. We love to hear your voice, but we have the time when we will call upon you to speak. So that is awesome. Put off your video as well, because if you're not speaking, we want to save the bandwidth of all of us here. And when you're speaking, you're going to spotlight you so that we can see you and know you. Then this is a very interactive space, as you already know, and we will alternate between writing and talking. So feel free, we love to hear from you. I hope you're adding your names right now as we speak on the roll call, page 6 to 7. If you have any question, type it on the Zoom chat. We will be there. There's someone monitoring that. You could also unmute yourself to ask any question that you have. So we have our code of conduct. As you know, we are a large group. We have a bit of rules that guide our engagement. So this is a harassment-free space, and in case you feel uncomfortable in any way, of which we have not experienced this before, we have Daniella and I, Aurelia Monene, whom you can reach out to for any of this. So the collaborative space is open, and you can you're welcome to start adding on to that, especially your name right now. So welcome again. Let me first of all introduce myself. My name is Aurelia Monene, and I'm going to go and I'm now going to invite the organizers. I'm going to mention who has organized this event. We have an amazing team that works day and night. The organizers are from different organizations, and I'm going to call upon them to introduce themselves so that we can know all of them. So I'd like to also mention that we have had in this event over 647 registered participants, 50% doctorate students, 20% bachelors or masters. We have 13% being principal investigators, 10% research technicians. We have postdoctoral fellows, 49% of us are early career researchers, 21% are established, 51% are male, are female, yeah, and then 46% identify as male, and 3% are non-binary. So you can see we are a rich mix of participants here, and it's been an awesome journey. So now I'm going to call upon the amazing organizers together with the teams. If you're from a particular organization, all of you introduce yourselves so that we can know you. Can I first start with AfricArXiv? Please introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Johansson Obanda from Kenya, and I work with AfricArXiv, the Pan-African Open Access Portal. And basically, with AfricArXiv, you can upload your working papers, preprints, accepted manuscripts, and published papers. We are dedicated to speeding and opening up research and collaboration among African scientists and helping to build the future of scholarly communication. So you're welcome to submit your work for free and also to open and freely access articles disseminated from across Africa and about Africa. And for more information, you can visit our website at africarchive.org. And I would like to invite my colleague, thank you.
Hi, thanks, Obanda. Hi, this is Joe. I'm based out of Berlin, also a team member for AfricArXiv. We also have Nabil here. Maybe Nabil can also say a few words. He's working with ORCID ID, as you might know. So ORCID, the organization behind your personal researcher's identifier. And he's also a board member of AfricArXiv. We also have Joy Wango of TCC Africa as one of the core organizers, who's currently experiencing technical issues, but hopefully she'll be able to join us in a minute or two or during the, so you'll hopefully see more of her, and you probably know her from the previous sessions. Nabil, do you want to say hi?
Sure. Thank you very much, Joe, and thank you, Johansson. So yeah, my name is Nabil Civi. I'm also part of the advisory board at AfricArXiv, and I'm also engagement lead for global consortia at ORCID. Yeah, I'm very happy to be with you here and to experience, let's say, this third session of pre-review.
Thank you very much. So once Joy from TCC is back, Training Center in Communication Africa. Once she's back, she will allow her to introduce herself. And now let us go to pre-review. Please introduce yourself, Daniella.
Hello, everyone. My name is Daniella Faderi, and I'm the director of PREreview. PREreview is a nonprofit, or operates as a nonprofit organization, and our goal is to bring more diversity and equity to the peer review process. So we are very excited to, as part of our mission, to be partnering with these three other fantastic organizations that have done excellent work in building capacity in researchers across Africa. And so that we can continue to increase the community of peer reviewers and focus on also the African researchers in engaging in new ways of doing peer review. I just want to mention that we have said in the email that we're going to have a Facebook Live. We are not yet there, but I am working on that. For who is probably, if you're here, then you're not going to need it, but I'm just going to also mention in the chat when that is available.
Thank you very much, Daniela. We are happy to see the introduction page from the participants is alive and bubbling. Happy to see such a rich representation in terms of context. Keep adding your name there. Let us know who's here. This is also a space to connect. And as we wind up the series, you could also make a friend today and with whom you can continue the journey with. So let us mute so that we can hear each other. The one of the other organization is the one that I represent, Eider Africa. I'm the director and also the founder. This is an organization we founded so that we can create a safe space for scholars, especially in Africa, where they can support each other with research mentorship. We leverage a lot on peer learning and peer collaboration, and we implement online and offline mentorship programs, and we collaborate a lot with many organizations to deliver this service. So these are the 4 amazing organizations that have put together this event. I also want to invite Joyce and Kaziri to also introduce themselves.
Thank you so much, Aurelia. My name is Joyce Wangare Ngoge. I am the lead research mentor at Eider Africa. And at this session, I am also the sign language interpreter. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joyce. Nkaziri?
Hello, everyone. Thank you. I'm Kaziri Eid. This is my sign name, and I'm also a part of Eider Africa, and I'm happy to be the sign language interpreter with Joyce. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nkaziri. So one thing in this event, we have really done our best to be inclusive. So as you realize on the collaborative form, we have 3 languages. We have 3 languages. We have English, French, and Arabic. Thank you so much for all the teamwork in terms of translation. And we have sign language. I think this has been one of the richness of this space in terms of increasing our spread and our diversity and inclusion. Then we also have our amazing author, one whose work amongst other co-authors we are reading today. I would like to invite Becky. Becky, please introduce yourself. We are happy that you could make it, and we are happy to really share your work and discuss it further. Welcome, Becky.
I'll turn on my video. Hi.
Yes, please.
Thanks for having me. This is really an incredible group. I'm blown away by how many countries I'm seeing coming up on the screen here. It's really something. I don't know what you want me to say here today. I haven't been part of these, but I'll introduce myself. I'm a professor at the University of Cape Town in the Department of Archaeology. And my co-author, Sheila Threa, is a professor. She's at Texas A&M in the US. I'm also a deputy dean in my faculty of science. I'm a deputy dean for something in South Africa we call transformation, which is essentially responsibilities for issues around diversity, equity, and inclusion within my faculty. So that's a whole other side of what I actually do. And I'm a paleoanthropologist by training and a biological anthropologist. So that's kind of the lens that I'm coming in. And I can say about Sheila, she's not here today, but she is also a paleoanthropologist. Unlike me, my specialization is in Africa. Her specialization is in Asia. She is Indian by descent, although she is American. So we came to this project from 2 very different spaces in terms of where we live and in terms of where we do our work. And while she obviously lives in the States, she does her work in Southeast Asia. I'm from the States, but I've been living in South Africa for 21 years. So I've been in this community, if you will, for a very long time. I'll leave it there. I'm also happy to come back in if you want to discuss anything else you want to know about why we might have done this paper or any other questions you might have.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Becky, for that. Yes, certainly. Once we start discussing the work, we shall invite you to share in the comments to also give your perspective. And just to remind everyone, today's the paper that we are reading, the publication that we are reading has been Colonialism and Narratives of Human Origin in Asia and Africa. So I hope you have read it. I can see a lot of countries are represented. It's safe to say the world is here today. So I will quickly just mention how this event came to be and then hand it over to my co-host, Daniella. So this event, as I told you, has been a 3-part series. We met in January as the 4 organizations who are working actively in Africa and with scholars from different parts of the world. And we had one concern. We were concerned about the research publication practices that most times are not equitable. And because of this concern, we decided that we would like to host an event that allows us to bring together our communities to engage in a different way of peer review, one that is more or less debate style, one that allows horizontal mentorship and sort of removes this hierarchy between reviewers and authors. So that was the incentive to do this. And we wanted to encourage a space of reflection and co-creation of knowledge. And those who've been with us all the time, you agree with me, we have really been engaged in co-creation. So the three reasons why we engaged in this event is to foster an open, inclusive approach to peer review on research manuscripts. They can be preprints or postprints. We are encouraging a space of kindness, constructive feedback, and collaboration. The other reason is because preprints, we want to highlight the work of African scholars or scholars that are covering relevant African issues, because we know our work as Africans
We lost Aurelia.
Very invisible, because of to create a space of reflection where we can exchange scholarly knowledge. We want to also participate in the decolonization agenda, making sure our academic spaces are more open, they're less biased, and they're able to support African scholars better. This series has been supported by Wellcome Trust, DEI Enrichment Grant, and we are very happy that you could journey with us. I'd like to now hand it over to Daniella. Over to you, Daniella.
Thank you so much, Aurelia. Technical update. I am still trying to figure out the Facebook Live, but hopefully we will do it as soon as we start the discussion. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here, and Aurelia for introducing this event. And so what I wanted to say, spend just a few words is like, why are we doing this in terms of like reviewing preprints and what they are, and really in relation to the traditional way of doing peer review. So as many of you might know, preprints are a wonderful opportunity for authors to share their manuscript in matters of hours before they go through the peer review of a journal. And why is that important? That's important because you can share your research much sooner than it would be if it has to go through the whole process of peer review, which is still an important process, but it allows you to deposit your research into a way that is openly accessible to everyone, and a point in time in which you can also receive the feedback. And so today we are actually looking at a preprint that was posted in 2018 by the team, and thanks again, Becky, for being here and allowing us to discuss your wonderful work. And I believe that at this point, that preprint actually has already been published as a chapter. So the feedback that we're going to give to the authors today might not end up obviously in the publications, but they're going to still be helpful for everybody else to obviously discuss, but also to the authors, hopefully, for future work. But the goal of providing community peer review to preprints is very much linked to using this process as a training, and so also learning together what are the best practices around peer review. Very often, especially for early career researchers, we are asked to do peer review, but then nobody haven't provided any training. So a pre-review, and also in partnership with these other organizations, we are hosting these events, but we are also hoping to plan future workshops in which we can work together on how to actually publicly share these reviews on preprints using available tools. So we will reach out in the future with an email opportunity to do that. And so I think we are at a point in time where we want to ask, so I see that you all are really active already of writing in the documents, so that's great. We have this sort of warm-up question, and on page 13, which is like, what are you hoping to learn from this event? And we're going to spend just 1 or 2 minutes. I see someone have already written that. We just want to hear what are your expectations so that we can adjust our work in the future. We also have some feedback form at the end, but this is just to get warmed up and see how everybody is going to work collaboratively on this document. So if you want to spend a couple of minutes, go to page at this point 14 and tell us why, what are you hoping to learn? And if there are not enough bullet points, you can just enter and create more. And then we will start and dive into the discussion. So just a few minutes. Thank you. Thank you. I see that it seems like hopefully that some of the hope are aligned with what we're going to try to do here. The effective peer reviewer is definitely something that we would like to dive in even more in future events. What does it even mean to be effective? I think that one of the things that we have discussed with this team is also what makes a good peer reviewer, and we really believe the constructiveness of feedback, the way how you craft your answer or your feedback in a way that could be useful to the authors rather than disruptive, is definitely the #1 trait for a good peer review. And so providing feedback that can actually have suggestions for the authors on how to improve it. And we too often see reviews that are actually either directly attacking the authors or mentioning comments that are not actually actionable. They cannot lead to a change directly. So we're going to have some questions as we are going to move into the discussion that will lead some of this feedback. And the way how we created these questions was mostly to follow what the structure of a review, expected review for a journal, but also for preprint reviews is, which is you want a summary at the beginning, and then we're going to see where you can dive into the details of the work. I have to confess that my background and most of our organizers here, I'm going to call for myself, is biased towards the life sciences. This is the very first time that I personally participate in a review of a humanities piece, and it was amazing. So I hope that the questions are going to be appropriate, but I am sure that there are probably questions that could be in the future also crafted more to address this kind of content. So if we scroll down, we can start into the discussions. And if the author is still here, I'd love to hear maybe a short introductions to the work and what brought you to doing this kind of research, and if you just want to spend a few minutes on that, and then we can dive into the questions. We're going to ask the authors to please stay silent when we do the discussion, but then we will invite you back to throughout the call to just to comment on our discussion. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy to speak to this briefly. Do you want me to leave my video off? Is that better for everyone, or put it on?
You are welcome to put it on, and maybe we can stop sharing the screen for a moment. Thank you, Joe.
Okay. I know it's terrible just looking at a screen all the time. I know. Sometimes you need to see a person. Yeah, I mean, so it's interesting that you describe it as a humanities paper, because actually my co-author and I are both biological anthropologists and paleoanthropologists. So we would consider ourselves to be scientists.
Apologies.
No, but you're right in some ways that, you know, it's kind of anthropological, or more of a humanities critique, if you will, of the field. And so in that respect, it's stepping a little bit back from our sort of core research to give a larger view of what's going on in the field. And I think the reason why we wrote this paper was because we're both paleoanthropologists who've been working in our field for a very long time in these two spaces, in Africa and in Asia. And we kind of independently, and I don't want to speak for Sheila, but I'm guessing she will agree with this. She'll probably kill me afterwards, but anyway. And we both kind of independently came to the realization that we, over the years, that we work in a discipline, in a system that still has colonial dynamics. And that importantly, this has deep roots, but that it goes all the way to the present. And that this affects not just, it's not just a historical thing. You know, it's not just that we had a discipline, as we talk about a bit in the paper, that has a deep history of emerging through a very racialized colonial space, but that it affects us today in terms of the spaces that we sit in terms of the backgrounds of the people who get prominence in the field, and in terms, I think, importantly, of the science that gets done. Because, you know, scientists tend to separate science and their work. And we really wanted to show how, you know, when you have these homogenous, racialized spaces with these kind of colonial dynamics, it actually has an effect on the narratives that we spin and the science that we tell, whether that is in the past or, again, all the way through the present. Because I think we can demonstrate how it's influenced that in the past, and you can't come away from that without realizing that we still do that, and that our present context is having an effect on the kind of science we produced. And that science is obviously homogenous, because it's largely produced by a homogenous Western lens. So we saw that, we came to these realizations that we wanted to talk about this, and also the realization that there's no literature on it. And so, you know, you can sit in your classrooms as much as you want and lecture to students on this thing that you're seeing, but unless you create the literature, it's not going to get out there. So that's why we wrote the paper. And as I'm sure you realize from reading it, the paper is essentially about what I was just talking about. It's kind of the history of paleoanthropology, and particularly the question of modern human origins, and how the sort of colonial influences and the racialized influences in that space have always worked to kind of maintain the hierarchy of power. You know, the sort of white Western world over Asia, with Africa at the bottom. And that even when the science has shifted in terms of the fossils that have been found, in terms of the interpretation, it still maintains that sort of power dynamics. And we obviously conclude at the end with, you know, the ways that we can shift that, which of course include primarily things like getting a lot more diverse voices in the room, so that you can get a much richer science and a much richer scientific narrative that's not, you know, cleaving to those kinds of dynamics. You know, I hope that's enough of a background to why we did this paper and what we were trying to achieve from it. And I do encourage people who are interested, who are in the sciences or interested in being in the sciences, that even when you're in that space, it's worth sometimes stepping back and looking at your discipline, because and writing about it in this way, because it really helps shine a light on things that you may not have seen, and that certainly other people may not have seen. And once they see it, I'll tell you, the feedback we've gotten has been amazing, because you can't unsee it, right, once you've seen it. So I'll leave it there, and I'll sit quietly in the background with my microphone off.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. And I actually apologize if I miscategorized yourself as a researcher and your research. This is part of my internal bias of being very, very niche-y into like the kind of research that I used to do. So I learned something else today. So thanks for that. And so I also think that this is incredibly, and we're going to discuss this, incredibly important and applicable to the world that I'm in, the neuroscience world. So I am very excited to discuss that bit, and how everything that you wrote and reflected on can be really applied to anything that I've experienced and lived as a person and a scientist. So I failed horribly at trying to do Facebook Live. So hopefully, as we move on, someone else from the organizing committee can help. But I'm glad that you're still here. So now we can move to, let's see, actually starting with the discussion. And if we go to, let's see, there are people already writing. So to page 18. You'll see that there are a series of questions, and we use red for English, and then there is blue for French, and gray and green for Arabic. And the way how we do this discussions usually is that we intermit what we call silent writing. So some of you are already writing, which is great, and just as we did for that first question. But also we invite you all, if you feel like it, to unmute yourself. And if you want to show your video, you can, but you certainly don't have to. And also vocalize the answer to the question. We want this to be an interactive discussion. So I'm gonna read the first question, and then I'm gonna pass it to Aurelia for the next one. So the first question is related to a general, like, what are, oops, now I lost, thank you. If you scroll down, I'll read it, because now I lost my page. Go to pay down more, thank you. Sorry, I'm now sharing my screen. There it is. So what are the main arguments, reflections of the preprint? Of course, the author gave us a summary themselves, but when we are asked to do a review, it is the first thing that it's very good to do is like a short summary that at the top that kind of describes what the work is about, and also highlights some of the main points and important points for the field. So if you want to spend a few minutes to answer this question, we can certainly wait, but also as people do that, if someone wants to unmute themselves and comment on these questions or anything that was said related to the preprint so far, you're also welcome to unmute.
Yeah, please, maybe to make it easier, if you feel like you want to speak to the plenum, please use the raise your hand button so we can easily find you and then unmute and talk to the group and share your thoughts. It's also part of the practice, so yeah, thanks. We have someone, please unmute. Domelitza, welcome.
Thank you, Joe. I forgot about that raise hand, but sure, please do use that tool if you wish to.
We can't hear you still. I see you unmuted. But,
Yes, I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes, now it works. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. I just wanted to contribute to the paper. I've looked at it. I've read it. It's an interesting read. I think it is pointing out certain things that we are actually seeing in Africa. Why we are behind in terms of I think the issue of colonization has actually drawn us back. That's why quite a lot of things are we actually want to see the Western being the ones that are directing us into doing quite a lot of things. I think it's an interesting paper, and I would like to clap hands to the authors, because they have pointed out very, very important issues that are relating to human evolution. I remember some time ago, there was one author from Australia who actually posited that the human evolution, there's something that they found here in Botswana. And the research is actually quiet. And these are the issues that actually the authors were pointing out in their paper, that when there's a discovery about a certain human evolution that relates to Africa, until it is actually approved. I don't know whether approved will be the proper word, or until it is given a blue. Then that research then does not actually go through. Thank you very much. I think I just wanted to point out that it's a very, very interesting read. It's a very good paper, and it is pointing out very important issues. Thank you.
Thanks very much for sharing your thoughts, and also for mentioning the other reference. If you can find it, you can also, you're most welcome to share it in the chat so we can expand our list of resources. Also at the very bottom of this document, we've shared related resources, and everybody's invited to also add more suggestions to the paper, and also generally on peer review and the different types of peer review, of which one we exercise one approach, as Daniela explained. Thank you. Anybody else who wants to speak up? Oh, sorry. Thanks, Tumedetsu. Who else wants to share their thoughts? Anything in particular that stood out? Like, what do you feel? What is the take-home message for you as you see many answers coming in writing? So basically, what triggered thought for you by skimming through or reading the whole chapter, basically, since it's turned out to be a book chapter eventually? Please raise your hand to unmute and then share with us your thoughts. And also, if you prefer, you can also share your thoughts in writing. And then maybe Daniela can also move to the second question.
Thank you. Yeah, I think Aurelia was going to, so the second question is similar, sort of similar to the first one. We can stay a little bit there or move to the third one, but please, Aurelia, take it from here. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for the responses you're giving to this very interesting read. So the second question is, what did you find interesting about the preprint? So what did you find interesting? I can already see some responses there. You can either silent write or just raise your hand and then unmute yourself. So I can see some responses like interesting that people thought or think Africa is so primitive and the people are not even human, and justified it, you know? So that's something that someone found very interesting. The holistic discussion on colonialism and narratives of human origin, especially the part where the Western tried to change the findings on Africa and Asia as a center for human evolution to favor them. Okay, keep them coming, keep them coming. What did you find interesting? I can see Florence saying the thought that Africa was considered primitive. So you are living in Africa, and it's I'm sure you're finding it interesting that this is what this is some of the perceptions that are held about the continent. So keep them coming, keep them coming. What did you find interesting about this preprint? The first question was about sort of your reflections on the arguments, but this is now what really struck you or even surprised you even about what the article is talking about. Yeah, someone says they very found interesting that all the views about the Western being superior. Keep them coming, keep writing. Yeah, please unmute yourself if you want to speak. We also love to hear your voice about what you found interesting about the article. Anybody would love to hear your voice? Okay, so keep writing. Thank you. I think, Daniela, we can go to the
I actually want to have a comment that I found pretty much everything that was written in interesting. If you look at my notes, it's like everything is highlighted in yellow, so that it became kind of a Christmas tree because there's so much good in there. I actually personally did not know that there was an evolutionary, like the theory from like where the first human came from, went back and forth from like Asian territories and African territories. And so I pretty much everything before Darwin that was cited in the paper, or even around Darwinianism, to me was very new. And of course, I'm not an expert in this, but that is what, interestingly, that all those theories are what was presented to us, or it was presented to me at school growing up in Italy. So that was all new to me. I think I wasn't surprised by the fact that everything, that the Western lens translates everything towards like basically the white supremacy culture. But it is, as the author mentioned at the beginning, I think I had a general understanding, but then understanding how that applies to knowledge and to science that is understood as a unfaulty and unbiased thing. It is really important, and it will change forever how I look at everything, including like a paper on a molecular biology topic. So thank you. Anyone else want to speak before we move on to question 3?
Maybe if I can also add from the AfricArXiv perspective, this is basically why we run the service in the first place. Besides like our core vision or mission rather, to make African research discoverable, we also provide the platform for these kinds of biased or also ethically highly questionable research approaches. Well, not this paper, but the valid call out that the paper does on similar research, which is also happening today. And it's not only unfortunate, it's a crime to humanity as a whole, because we as humans, I think we can, like this is personal opinion, I think we can do much better than this, especially in the 21st century, but also generally speaking. So with AfricArXiv, we want to provide the platform for this being accessible, because normally you would see studies that portray Africa in a certain way, or ethnic studies on Africans and on people who live in the village, behind paywalls. So African scholars would never see this to be able to call this out in the first place. And here we have a chance, and also thanks again, Becky, and also Sheila and other people on your teams who have been involved, to call this out in a publication, and also through peer review exercises like this one. We want to empower and enable African scholars to access questionable research about Africans and Africa in general, and have an African scholarly stand to it, and claim ownership of African history, of how African history is being written, like from now on, basically. And also, yeah, and can also be reviewed, looking like assessing past publications to change the narrative. So I personally think this can be a game changer in history if we manage to scale this and to have more of these discussions, and not only in this consortium, but also on a global scale in different research groups in different parts of the world. Thank you. And please feel free to comment on that also, if you share that belief and trust and hope, or if you have other opinions that go into other directions. That's also, well, this can also be a debate. Hi, Joy. Maybe so we are also lucky to have Joy back to the live session. And then, so yeah, please, Joy, introduce yourself, and then we can move on to question number 3, I'd suggest. Joy, please unmute. We can't hear you. Sorry, Joy, we can't hear you. Still not? And somebody?
No, I can't hear Joy either. I'm sorry.
I can see you. That's a starter. Sorry.
Joy is the brilliant host of this group, and we're very sad that she's having this problem.
Yeah. So, but it surely can be fixed in the process. So question number 3, Aurelia, do you want to introduce the question? And also, since we're kind of trilingual, also we have Nabil here who is multilingual himself. So if anybody here, maybe Nabil can translate that to French and Arabic. If anybody here would like to comment on the content of the paper, because some of you also had the opportunity to read and assess it in Arabic or French, please feel free to also write in French or Arabic and respond to the questions, which we also translated. And you can also unmute and speak and ask in French. And then Nabil can help us to summarize and translate to English, and the response can also be translated back, unless Nabil wants to translate directly if it's a quick fix. Thank you.
Yeah, of course, and sure, and thanks, Joe. So in Arabic, إذا عندكم سؤال بالعربية يعني حطوه في الكومنت ونجاوبكم يعني على السؤال. Et en français, si vous avez une question, prière de l'ajouter sur la feuille et nous allons vous répondre. Et merci.
And perhaps Aurelia, can you add Swahili? Because I'm sure we have a lot of Kenyans and Tanzanians and other representatives here. So feel free to also reply in Kiswahili if you
Swahili. Anyway, nitajaribu. So kwa hivyo wale ambao wanaongea Kiswahili mnaweza andika kwa Kiswahili na tutaweza kutafsiri kwa lugha zinginezo. So let us keep writing. I think Daniella, you're moderating the third question, or it's me? I don't know.
Sure, you're doing such a great job. The only thing I could add to this language is Italian, which is probably not very helpful. So I'll just continue with my English. But I see already people are writing on the third. This is a question like diving into the approaches to the argument. Basically like a reflection on how do you think that the authors did at supporting the argument. So this is all about like the citations in this case of the work previously done and how that is presented in support of their argument that they made. And if you have any suggestions on perhaps the structure on how that work was presented throughout the paper, or additional citation and work that you think should be included to strengthen the argument. If these were had a specific like method question, this is why I was saying like we readapted some of these questions. It would be addressing some of the data analysis, if there was both either qualitative or quantitative data analysis. Yeah, in this case, it's just a general approach to supporting the argument. So if anyone wants us to unmute themselves and comment on this or anything that we've talked so far, you're welcome to do it. And the author, I know I said like, please remain silent. You are also welcome to interject at any time and give us your comments if you have them. If someone has a question for the authors, this is also a great opportunity to do so since they're here. Thank you all for writing. It seems like, so I'm going to read one of these. So the approaches are good. Maybe the writers can add how some Africans decide to look down upon other African, probably thinking in their minds erroneously that they are Western. For example, Gaiman allows Westerns into a compound just because they are Westerns, but makes it hard for African. I'm sure. So if I interpret this correctly, is this talking about how even within Africans, there might be some ways of like judging and miscategorizing identities. I'm not sure I'm interpreting it correct, but
yes, that's exactly what I was thinking, but I don't know how that would fit in their paper. But I thought of that because that happens a lot. Some people feel stay in the colonization stage, but they are not aware of it. Probably they are not schooled enough or something like that.
Mm-hmm. If the author wants to.
Yeah, I'm happy to come in. This is a great point. I think that, we tried to acknowledge in here, and I think it's almost a paper in and of itself, that researchers in the process of doing this, Western researchers tend to homogenize Africa, and they homogenize Asia often, or at least in sort of general areas, Eastern Asia, Southern Asia, that kind of thing, as opposed to looking at the diversity of Africa. And that's also been a historical, deep historical issue in the field. And really only in the last handful of years have people been, and I'm talking about paleoanthropologists, been seriously looking at the fact that, whoa, Africa is not homogenous. And this comes from this same racialized lens, right? It comes from like, oh, they're just all different from us, as opposed to really understanding the diversity. And I'll give you a good example of this. The new research that's coming out about skin color. I think a paper came out in 2017, Nature or Science or something like that. It was specifically around diversity of African skin colors. And the sort of whole premise of that paper was that diversity of skin color had been looked at as, oh, everyone was Black, and then you left Africa, and that's when new things started to happen. And when researchers flipped that on its head and said, wait a minute, everyone in Africa is really variable, we started to discover new research or new ideas about how skin color variation evolved. And variation in skin color in Africa is highly deep in terms of its origins, both in terms of lighter skin color and very dark skin color. And I'm talking in the millions of years range. So I think you're 100% right that this whole narrative homogenizes Africa. And that's another big problem generally. In the way that researchers characterize, the origins of people, but it is changing.
Thank you, Becky. Thank you very much.
So we appreciate the comments that are coming in also from the participants. We're now going to go to question 5, because I think I think some of you have already started answering question 4, but we will go to 5 so that we can quickly discuss what are the strengths and weaknesses of the preprint. What kind of assumptions, if any, do you feel the authors are making? And I can already see some of you have begun to sort of input into that. So let's hear your views. What are the strengths and weaknesses of the preprint? What assumptions are the authors making that you feel you'd like to highlight? You can unmute yourself. I can see already some are saying that, pointing out that Westerners determine what roles Africans and Asians play in shaping scientific narrative, because it is only their voice that has authority in human history. So that unequal arrangement and that dominant narrative that has been pushed about Africa and about the West being better than the rest is what I think the person is pointing out. So yeah, so I think it would be nice if we just say the strength or the weakness so that we can be able to tell apart. So one of us is also saying the strengths on pointing out clearly where and how the journey to define the origin of humanity began, and taking us along up to the current definitive approach in answering the question at hand. So I think the journey that the authors have taken us to history, brought us back all the way to where we are. I think that has been found as a great strength especially for people who this is a new topic, who issues of colonization, whether in academia or scholarly work, are new. I think the authors do a great job of setting a very good context from the history up to making linkages with how this affects each of us, because this affects all of us as scholars. Then another strength is they have an understanding of why Western world is considered superior, or rather not considered by them superior. So anyone who wants to unmute, we can hear what you'd like to say about the strength, the weakness, the assumptions of the article.
I just want to mention again that weaknesses are also, and any negative quote unquote comments are also welcome as long as they're constructive. And I think that as an author myself, those are also very helpful in order to challenge our own views. So if someone has something, don't be shy that the authors are here. Of course, if you have to express some weakness or negative comment, we wanted to do it respectfully and in a way that is constructive. And I think it can only enrich the discussion.
Yeah, maybe also adding on this, I think weaknesses can also be, and also strengths. So any of this is opinion making and it's opinion expression. So it's of course subjective, and that's okay. And as such, what might be considered a weakness is maybe in your view, the authors could have also addressed on top of all these important points to kind of lay out. But what about this aspect? But from an author's perspective, of course, at some point you need to call it a paper and a story, and then maybe other aspects are subject for future publications or other chapters in a book or something. But this is also, for you to add, I like the paper and I was missing this because I think it's also important. So that's also valid to mention here as a sort of weakness, but it's not really weakness. It's just adding information to these important points to be raised.
Thank you, Joe and Daniela, for that. I can see one is saying that the views are not general to all people in the Western world. So it's good also to make that observation that we have heterogeneous perspective even in the Western world about all this. So I think we'll move on to the next question. The last question, no, not the semi-last question.
Yeah, maybe, Aurelia, can I just please add also, I think what's also problematic in anthropology, but also other subjects, that early career researchers often, I think this was also addressed earlier in this discussion, early career researchers are often kind of ripped off their ethical and moral standards inside academia. Like I see a lot of PhD students who, when they enter the PhD journey, they're being told, this is how we do it here, and forget about your moral standards because this doesn't apply here. This is how we do research, and this is what's kind of a certain quality standard. So even though they feel awkward about it or might also be highly alerted, like many people are being discouraged of holding high moral standards up against their gut feelings or whatever you want to call it, against their belief systems. So they're being taught not to be morally basically accountable. And I've seen this with how research animals are being treated despite legislature. That's a different topic, of course, but I mean, this also applies to moral standards in humans. And as we are equipped like to be morally accountable, but then the system tells us otherwise. And that's, I think, also what kind of is an aspect here to mention. I don't know if you share that observation or not.
I think that's important, Joe, to mention that in as much as we have scholarship bringing this awareness, sometimes the systems are not as responsive, and we have to keep the struggle. We have to keep finding ways to speak back to this dominant knowledge, dominant framing in our small ways, so that we also don't lose sight and are sucked back into the system. And this is why such platforms are important, so that we can continue speaking back until a place where we have an equal dialogue of perspective, where people can come together and speak on equal basis without this hierarchy of experiences and of people. So thank you very much for that. So if you have number 6, if you have any additional comments, either minor concerns like typos and the structure of the preprint, we welcome you to give some input there. As you do that, we could move to question 7. As I see, there isn't much comment there. So let's know, would you recommend this this preprint to others? If so, why would you recommend? And if you have a specific maybe organization, or maybe you could say, I wish my university could also read this, you could also make that proposition. So would you recommend this to others? If so, why? If not, why not? So it would also be good to see where you'd find utility for these amazing insights in your work. So as you write on that, we will go quickly to question 8.
Yeah,
so,
what I want to say, Aurelia. No,
yes.
sorry. One point before we move to that, which I think I'm super excited about question 8 and how we frame it, is that the way how these questions are there are because, again, like when you're writing your review, just pretend that you're writing a review, and it's like, you know, the summary at the beginning, and then major concerns are usually highlighted first, and then there is also space in a review for minor concerns or minor points that are all the stylistic points that you might point out, typos or suggestions on how to restructure paragraph. So that's why it is there. It is probably less relevant now since the chapter has already been published. And so that's why I think, thank you, Aurelia. We're like moving a little bit quickly through those so we can dive into these more juicy last questions that are more related to the actual topic of the preprint, which might not actually be something you would like to put in a review, because this is more about like your own personal, the impact that the piece had on you. It's more about bringing the attention to the fact that reviewing research is not only just for the authors, but it's also for ourselves, and reflecting on how can we use what we just read in our own, reflecting on our own practice and communities. So this question 8, and Aurelia, I'm going to bring it just back to you. Yeah, you go ahead and please comment on this 8 question.
Yes, so I can see there's someone who started to type on question 8, where we are looking at how does this preprint, just go back a bit. Who is on the screen? How does this preprint, okay, what we can see now is question 7, the recommendations of who could read it. Question 8 is about how does this preprint relate to or open dialogue with diverse communities' viewpoints. So I think this is really to ask about, because we are, even in Africa, we are diverse communities. In Asia, we are diverse communities. We have diverse viewpoints and standpoints. So how does this preprint allow us to have open dialogue with this diversity, even within ourselves and within even the hierarchies that are in Africa or in Asia? How does it help to facilitate that open dialogue? So you can add to that.
Yeah, and also like I think that this question is also like how does this argument that is made specifically around like this like a topic of like human evolution and in an anthropological sense, but like how does this make you reflect in your own field? I'm sure that there are a lot of different fields and experts in this call, and maybe someone wants to unmute themselves and comment like, is any of what you read into this work like resonating and something that you might apply to your field of study as well? I'm just curious about that.
Thank you, Daniella. Let's see, anyone can unmute. Maybe it's easier to speak through than to type it. Let's hear your perspective.
Hi.
Yes.
Good evening. This
Hi,
is
Khadija.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so I am from the science background, and there was a time I went for a program, and then the person was talking about the African poverty is intertwined within our DNA, which was a little bit confusing. And then I think that brought up a lot of discussion. And I think at one point it was, I think the person apologized and decided to eliminate that particular point from the discussion. So I was thinking, rather than him saying that the African DNA is a little bit unique based on our own race, he was associating it with poverty, which is not so. I think it wasn't so. So I think this will also go a long way in not just talking about the origin, but to a lot of researchers as well. And there are sometimes people, even back in our institution, you find people not able to send their papers out to international level, feeling that they are not up to standard. And sometimes people feel like they cannot communicate with the white people because of some self-esteem issues, feeling that they are inferior. And a lot more, I think, not just in this aspect, but in our own general day-to-day life as well. This paper will actually motivate and stimulate somebody to increase the self-esteem. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Khadija, for that very insightful insight into how this and I think that's the problematic also with this dominant view, as you mentioned, Khadija, is that it individualizes the issues that are happening to Africa and sort of masks the kind of violent processes like colonialism that have really shaped where Africa is today. And I think that that hiding, sort of making invisible what is the real cause of inequalities and all that is also part of this agenda of othering, so that then the problem is with Africans and it's not with the systems that keeps producing and reproducing inequality. And I like what you say, that the paper is also boosting the self-esteem of African scholars, because now you realize that it is a framing that maybe our scholarship is not of good rigor. It is not really in our DNA. It's how we had to be framed a certain way so that also a particular form of domination can take place. So thank you for highlighting the power that this paper sort of gives back to the scholars. Yes, Becky, you'd like to speak?
Yeah, sorry, I just found that comment so upsetting. I hope that articles like this and hopefully many more make it clear that race was constructed by white people, right? It was the whole idea that we are different and the othering of people was constructed by the West. And it was constructed for very specific reasons that were related to colonialism and that were related to, the grabbing of resources, human resources, but also material resources. And that affects everything, and it affects the sciences that we're doing. And the fact that people feel inferior is completely a result of that horrible thing that was done. And so hopefully, you'll feel empowered as you grow in your research to confront this and really understand this isn't you. It's the way that the system was created purposefully to put you down. Anyway, I just wanted to say that. And having said that, I think it's really hard as young people, because I know there are a lot of young people in this room, to break out of this and to break out of these sort of colonial, these patriarchal dynamics that are there. And this is particularly hard in the sciences, where essentially you're rewarded for cleaving to Western norms, right? You're rewarded for becoming Western. And that's what's hard about getting out of this and changing the way that science is done is because you don't get rewarded for changing the way science is done, right? You get rewarded for becoming the people who have been oppressing you. And I would encourage you to find good mentors, to find mentors who make space for you, who uplift you, who center your voices, who defend you, and put yourself in there. But I know it's hard to do. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you very much, Becky, for not just writing an article that is empowering, but even for those sentiments of empathy and really empowering us on this call. And also we can empower our students. I know we have lecturers on board to really see that they have something to share and they have a voice in this journey. And with time, we can do better and be better. Anyone who's raised their hand to me? Eletso, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Very well.
Yes, I just wanted to say, like someone was saying earlier on, that we Africans are also the ones who are actually allowing this kind of behavior to keep on going. We need to also embrace that we are playing a part in ensuring that this colonialism goes on with us. Like someone was saying, a gate man would actually open the gate to a white man without actually questioning anything. But when a black man comes or an African comes, they start questioning them on a lot of things. And I think this article should actually be distributed should actually be an open access so that people can see that as Africans we actually play a very, very important role in the development of other countries than we as countries actually are developing. We have a lot of resources in Africa, and all those all this development that is happening in other countries, in the Western countries, is actually from resources that are coming here, because we actually are not taking what we have very serious. And in my field of study, I think it's a very important preprint that would actually enlighten to say, even us as Africans, we have the opportunity to actually drive research that would actually bring more development into Africa than it would into the Western. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Meletso for that, that very useful reminder for us all to remember, as we are in the system, we can also perpetuate this. And sometimes the system is very violent in a way that if you don't bend with the system, you also are kicked out. So it's a struggle that we have to keep on. So Abby, please go ahead. Abby?
Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity, and thank you for the authors for coming up with this. I join every other person that has spoken about this very good and insightful write-up to say this is a very good work, and it's like I once said, it's really a call to every one of us to see that we are not just there, and that we can actually get things done, like you just mentioned. But I also want to point out that I think the older generation need to get some of these insights correctly too, because there are times that they are the ones that are bringing this thing back to the memories of the younger generation, trying to make us feel this is the way it has been and it's meant to be like that. I think the younger generation are trying to weigh these things up, but we still come back to almost the same center, because the older generation, because of maybe their previous experiences, they are saying it as if that's the norm and that is the way it should be. So I feel that if there is a way this paper could be, I don't know where, maybe especially in academia, a good number of professors where they will be and we'll get that exposed to them. And so we won't be too much challenged. When we want to do things in our own way, when we want to do formulation using our own basic formula, we can stick to it rather than sticking to the Western formula, and then when we eventually publish, it's just for them. We cannot have it get a reproduction based on what we have down here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Abe, for making mention in that tension that is there. Even as we are having these conversations, we have sort of people who are gatekeeping for the system, and there are those who are sort of emerging to speak, and that tension is quite there, as you say. And in small ways, we can find ways where we can also discuss some of these papers in our own institutions, through committees or through journal clubs, so that we can slowly bring this awareness in our education spaces. Though I know it's not as easy as that, because once you are gatekeeping a system, you benefit from it. So also leaving that can be a bit difficult. But nonetheless, I think the struggle in small ways, in collaborative peer review, even in institutions, could be ways in which to address some of these things. There's someone else. Joe, you have your hand up.
Yes, Aurelia, thank you. I just wanted to also add a perspective of Indigenous peoples at this point, and also a question to Becky. Like, have you received feedback, kind of including the position of Indigenous peoples in your work, or are you working on other aspects which includes Indigenous peoples? Because they're in particular often the subject of ethnic studies. And in the last session of this review workshop series, peer review workshop series, sorry, this is a dog, sorry. We had an Indigenous representative also present to share their voice, and it's also here important to have conversations with Indigenous peoples and not about. So we kind of, yeah, anyways, but that's basically the question. And I think it also addresses, or it's also an opportunity to consider for question 8. So please feel free to add your thoughts on that as well. And sorry, Becky, do you have that also covered in your research, or is this a different dimension?
So I mean, obviously this paper was sort of a higher scale analysis, just looking at the field as a whole. But yes, I have a number of students who are working in that space, particularly in the space of what in South Africa are called either the Khoi or San or colored communities, and looking at questions of identity and questions of, how including those people in co-creation of knowledge might shift, the output that comes out within an archaeological or a biological, anthropological context. So yes, we have that going on. I think it's essential going forward in work. And I don't really like the word Indigenous very much. I just think of these as communities of people who are, the research is about them and it should involve them. And so we need to shift to a space where we don't other them and turn them into, because I think Indigenous has been historically used as a word that is equated with primitive almost. And so we need to move away from that and just simply collaborate with communities and collaborate with people who can grow as a part of this knowledge production in ways that may not be academic ways, or they may be academic ways, but that feeds back into the community. So yeah, that's a little lengthy way to answer you, but yes, I am involved in that kind of work and I think it's essential.
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear, and thank you very much for that, and also thanks especially for being involved in and engaged in that work, because I also think it's super important. I've worked with Indigenous communities from across the world in certain projects and initiatives And indigenous representatives themselves see it very essential to be distinct from mainstream societies, which are mostly Western imprinted. But I see a point of, I mean, I think it's a general question. Maybe this is also to the participants. It's a Pandora's box also what I'm about to say, but maybe also a trigger for thought. What is it either or can we find a balance between being like one global society or one national society versus fostering and acknowledging and celebrating diversity, which includes ethnic and cultural diversity and heritage, and also tribal heritage, which of course, when it becomes tribalism, can also be counterproductive or destructive, actually. So yeah, I think, I don't know. Yeah.
I guess, sorry, just to clarify, I mean, my problem with indigeneity is really just the term, because I think it's been used in the past to, to claim that it's purity or primitive. It's not against the idea that obviously you need to have diversity in places. It's more of a historical use, you know?
Totally, yeah. So maybe, I don't know, but we need a new invention for the terminology then, because I agree, like, naming things and people and groups of people is highly critical, and especially when it comes with historical baggage, which is the case here for sure. Thanks for clarifying that. Yeah. Interesting, huh? Okay. Please add your thoughts and raise your voice and add your thoughts to the collaborative document so we can continue the conversations. And if you see, like, if you also have an interest to reach out to, I'm sure Becky is happy to hear from you. Becky, I don't know if you want to share your email or website details, people can get in touch. You can also get in touch with all of us from the organizing committee at any point after this event. So if you feel you want to continue the discussion beyond this session, we are all very much open to do that. I think I can speak for everyone. Thanks, Becky. So we have the website of the project, I suppose.
Thank you so much, Joe and Becky, for this. This was exactly like part of what we also wanted to discuss. And I think that the terminologies is also part of this like colonialist approach, when like even terminologies and names are robbed and renamed and rebranded to mean something. And then you even lose the language for talking about things. So I think that this is very true for even the word like colonialism of knowledge, and how it can be used in a way that is not appropriate, not meaning what it should mean. And I just want to bring a super quick example, and then we can move on to the last question, which is, I was wondering why, if there's an intention of not using the term of white supremacy culture throughout the paper, as we have been using it quite much to describe the centrality of like how white is always the norm, and always like anything that deviates from that is like the different and the part of the diversity, which is something that very much doesn't apply, for instance, to a continent of Africa, in which there's no such a thing, like the actual there is no the Africans are not minorized, obviously, in their own countries, but like the way how we talk about that is very much like white centric, even though when we refer to a global environment. So I don't want to like linger too much, but I was reflecting on this idea of like how even terminologies, when they get misused, and then we lose the ability to use them in a way that they should be used. I don't know if Becky, you want to comment anymore, but I can also leave it at that. If anyone wants to comment on that.
No, I mean, I think we can leave it at that. And I think it's the same. It's the same as what I was saying about race. We have to also remember that a lot of the carving up of Africa was done by Westerners too, and pitting people against each other. And so a lot of this language and narrative is just baggage, right? It's baggage that we're stuck with and have to, I think, just interrogate head on. And I think rather than being like a bunch of white women in the room doing it, we need to make sure that like all the other people in the room are interrogating it too, and making sure that they really look carefully at it, because it's been imposed on them,
Absolutely, thank you. Aurelia, do you wanna, we have the last question, which is one of my favorite. We can get to that if you want, Aurelia, or.
Let me see that. That should be how we can apply it. 1 minute, let me just. So the last question is, how can you use the work presented in the preprint to improve your own practice? I think we've spoken a little about that, but it will be good to hear from you participants. How do you use this work to improve your own practice, to improve your own work, to improve maybe your own even scholarship journey, now that you have some awareness of how the system is, how this really improve what you're doing currently. So let's hear your views. Let's type. This is the final question. So energy, everyone. Go to the document. Let's see what you type here. We would like to see how would you use this work in your own practice. I think for me, this work is very important because the premise of our mentorship is this, creating a space where African scholars can make visible their voice by collaborating by these amazing organizations, but also being aware of the inequalities in the system and how we as African scholars can keep on pushing back, speaking back, and presenting ourselves in various forums so that we are also visible, we are also part of this conversation. Yes, so I think this is important in terms of reinforcing the work that we are doing already. Anyone wants to unmute and talk about how they will use this work in their practice? Maybe you're a lecturer, maybe you are a dean of a university, maybe you're someone who was preparing to publish. What would this, or you're writing your research paper right now, what does this work, what could this work sort of add to what you're doing, if at all? So let's keep writing. And I think we are right at our program ends at 7:30. So I think we are right on time there. So I think I'll hand it back to Daniella to sort of take us to the finishing line.
Sorry.
Over to you, Daniella.
I always trouble sharing my screen. We are at the finishing, and we can, maybe whoever wants to stay and maybe continue discussions, I'd love that. But whoever needs to go, also thank you so much for being here, for participating. In the end of the document, we have a form. If you have a few minutes to just give feedback on this event. And I also want to mention that this group we're not done here. We want to do more with you all. So we're going to send you an email to follow up, and whoever wants to sign up for further discussions. One thing we're planning is to do some what we call office hours, or like a workshop where we can all go through some of the platforms, and for instance, like a way of like creating your ORCID ID if you don't already have that. Uploading a preprint, giving open feedback, and strengthening your profile as a reviewer online, but also in a safe space. And yeah, so watch out for emails from us. And while we end, we're going to stick around for a little longer. So anyone wants to give some final remarks and some final thoughts that they have been holding this whole time, we really would love to hear it. For organizers, participants. Joy, Joy, please, if you can actually speak, that would be wonderful to hear from you. You are.
I have to use the audio from my phone. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Finally. Okay, thank you so much. I had audio problems, but thank you, Aurelia, for taking over, and it has run very smoothly. I'm the Executive Director of the Training Center in Communication. And we are a center that supports researchers on how to improve their research output and increase their visibility. And partnering with Eider Africa and PREreview to host this workshop was so important to us because it was all about supporting African researchers produce good quality outputs through even understanding the process of peer review. And when we are looking at the preprint, the book chapter that was just shared, we can actually see some of the challenges that we have also gone through in supporting early career researchers in Africa. There's been a lot of bias, especially when it comes to collaboration. There's been a lot of bias when it also comes to writing the academic papers and even support. So Becky, your paper brings out issues beyond evolution, an evolutionary perspective, but actually a social perspective which still exists that early career researchers from the continent actually face. So it is also one of the reasons why, even as a center, when we are looking at possible partners to work with in the continent, when we're looking at partners from the global north, we are very critical in trying to understand what their interests are in the continent, especially when it comes to supporting early career researchers. What is their long-term plan? And we've noticed that, and this is from even for lack of better words, a business perspective, the interest in the continent is always short-term. And it is, you're in the continent and you're done after a few years. So, and this actually puts a dent on whatever kind of development anyone would want to make in the continent. So this is really timely. It is controversial, but it makes so much sense. And it is the reason organizations like AfricArXiv exist. I'm sure Joe has mentioned that. It's also a reason why, as a center, we exist, because it is an African center supporting African researchers to increase their research visibility, because we understand the problem, we see the problem. We see it from an African lens. So, and it's also one of the reasons also why organizations like Eider Africa exist. And it doesn't come as a surprise that when we were partnering with PREreview, they had this long-term approach when it comes to supporting early career researchers. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. And I wish I could actually contribute further during the session, but do have a lovely evening, and thank you all for taking part in our 3-part series workshop, peer review workshop. Oh, okay.
Thank you so much, Joy. And again, thank you for everybody who's still here. We are gonna be here around, but whoever needs to leave, thank you, the authors. Thank you, Becky, for being here and for participating to such a rich discussion. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you in the future events. You're all welcome, anyone, to unmute and still talk, but also if you need to leave, we also understand. Thank you. Bye. And I want to also thank you so much for the Kenyan Sign Language interpreters. They are always brilliant. Thank you for your work.